My girlfriend Betsy's father, Mr. Liu, offered me 5 million to leave his daughter. I couldn't bear the thought of holding her back because of my family's bankruptcy, so I took the money and broke up with her. 3 years later, I returned from studying abroad, only to find that Betsy had transformed into a formidable business tycoon, even dating a popular celebrity named Lucas. It was at this time that Mr. Liu approached me again, offering a staggering 50 million for me to win back his daughter. I politely declined, saying, "Love isn't something you can buy or sell." He upped it to 100 million, then I immediately said, "Don't worry, uncle, my name will be in your family register very soon." My decision to leave Betsy and go abroad 3 years ago wasn't driven by Mr. Liu's money. I still remember the day I broke up with her. Her usually proud eyes were red and swollen with tears as she begged me not to leave. Honestly, her tears and pitiful appearance made me hesitate. But I ultimately chose to leave for a different reason. My family had gone bankrupt, my parents were killed by enemies, and I was afraid that if I stayed, those enemies would find me and hurt Betsy. Of course, I never told her any of this, so I understand why she resented me. After I returned to the country, I saw a giant billboard at the airport. It was an advertisement featuring Lucas, the popular actor, as the spokesperson for Betsy's company, Liu Corporation. Looking at the face that resembled mine on the poster, I couldn't help but smile bitterly. So Betsy is into the whole replacement thing too, huh? I thought to myself. I lingered for a while in front of the poster before finally deciding to leave. Just then, my phone rang with a familiar number. It was Mr. Liu. Did he know I was coming back today? Was he going to warn me to stay away from his daughter? "Lee, I'll give you 50 million to marry my daughter." Before I could even say hello, Mr. Liu's anxious voice boomed through the phone. I was speechless. Betsy and I had broken up 3 years ago, and she had a new boyfriend. How could I possibly marry her? It's absolutely impossible for a celebrity to marry into our family. Naturally, I want to get rid of him. You come and be the Liu family's son-in-law. Hearing Mr. Liu say this, I finally began to understand the situation. It seemed he wasn't happy with Betsy's celebrity boyfriend and was reminded of how good I was. He was offering me money to marry Betsy. "Uncle, Betsy and I haven't been in contact for 3 years. Isn't this idea a little too sudden?" 100 million. Mr. Liu said domineeringly. 100 million. I quickly pinched myself, afraid I was going to faint from excitement. "What, you're not willing? Then I'll find someone else." Mr. Liu didn't hear a response from me, so he prepared to hang up. "Wait, uncle, I agree. Don't worry, my name will be in your family register." I applied for a job at Liu Corp's jewelry design company and rented an apartment near the office. Then, I opened my phone and started researching what had happened in the 3 years I was gone. I was shocked by what I found. In the past 2 years, Betsy had been making waves in the business world. She went from being a nobody to a powerful CEO in just 2 years. My little plum had become a ruthless CEO and had even ruthlessly ousted her own father from the company. As for how she met Lucas, it was a classic story. A year ago, Lucas wasn't as popular as he is now. His unscrupulous agent tricked him into going to a party, hoping to sell him to a rich CEO who was looking for a young toy boy. Lucas, clueless, became prey. Betsy, who happened to be there, saw what was happening and stepped in to save him. She won Lucas's gratitude, and from then on, Betsy, who had always been aloof and indifferent, seemed to be possessed. Not only did she take Lucas to all kinds of high-end events, but she also openly gave him resources and connections. Although the two never officially announced their relationship, everyone knew what was going on. A domineering CEO and a male celebrity, I tutted as I read the fan fiction written by netizens. I had to admit, these netizens could really write. Although there were fictional elements in the stories, most of them were true, based on the gossip about the everyday lives of the rich and famous. For example, the male protagonist, Lucas, was an orphan who graduated from a second-rate university but worked hard to go from being an extra to a top star. Very inspirational. For example, Betsy's love for Lucas was evident in the way she bought him jewelry, designer clothes, villas, introduced him to directors, and got him roles. And then there was the twist in their love story. Betsy's father didn't approve of Lucas, so she repeatedly went against her father for him. After reading all of this, I finally understood why my sugar daddy suddenly became so generous as soon as I returned to China. Back when Betsy was just dating me, a penniless orphan, Mr. Liu already didn't like me and was quick to pay me off. Now that she was defying him for a boyfriend, he must be even more desperate to break them up. Good boy, Lucky, good boy. My sweet Lucky. I stroked the head of the kitten I had just bought from the pet store. Just then, my phone buzzed with a notification. Your application has been approved. Welcome to Liu Jewelry. I gave my golden chinchilla a kiss. Lucky cat, my lucky star. The next morning, I put on my best business attire and stepped into the Liu Corporation building. "You're Lee, right?" A young man with slick back hair hurried over to me as soon as I entered the office. "My name is Tony. I really love your design work, especially the Moon and Sixpence series. I can't believe I get to work with you." I smiled politely. "Thank you. That series is my favorite too. After all, the inspiration for Moon and Sixpence is Betsy." Tony was very enthusiastic and told me all about the company and the gossip among colleagues. I gradually settled into this new environment. 2 days later, Tony suddenly rushed up to my desk. "Have you heard? The big boss is coming to inspect this morning." "Which big boss?" I asked. "Mr. Liu, of course. They say he's bringing his little boyfriend with him." As soon as I heard Tony mention Betsy and Lucas, I immediately went to the bathroom to fix my appearance. I thought it would be a while before I saw Betsy again, but I didn't expect to have the opportunity so soon. An ex-encounter, I couldn't show weakness. The news of Betsy's arrival spread like wildfire, and the entire floor was abuzz with excitement. It wasn't until the supervisor came up from the elevator with a man and a woman that everyone quieted down. Betsy was holding Lucas's hand. Their fingers were intertwined, and they looked very intimate. Tony nudged me from behind. "What are you standing there for?" The supervisor told the design department to go to the meeting room. I snapped back to reality and followed him to the meeting room. Betsy sat at the head of the table, her back straight. Her impeccable makeup made her even more stunning. She glanced towards the door as we walked in, and for a split second, our eyes met. I was curious about her reaction, but she only gave me a faint glance before looking away, as if she had just seen a stranger. I ignored the pang in my heart and found a seat. "Mr. Liu, Mr. Chen." The supervisor nodded and bowed. "Everyone from the design department is here." Betsy raised an eyebrow at Lucas. "You choose." Lucas turned to look at us, smiling. "Sorry to interrupt, everyone. Your Mr. Liu insisted on personally designing a first anniversary gift for me, so I'm going to have to trouble all of you." What a show-off. I could practically smell the love in the air. "Don't you think Lee looks a bit like Mr. Liu's little boyfriend?" Tony whispered in my ear. Am I seeing things? Before I could answer, Lucas suddenly asked, "I heard Lee just started working here. Can I meet him?" Under everyone's gaze, I took a step forward with a smile on my face. "Hello, I'm Lee." Lucas looked at me in surprise. "I really like your work. I didn't expect us to have similar tastes and even look alike." I guess Betsy's new boyfriend wasn't very observant, but that was fine with me. I was no prize myself. "Yeah, me neither. After 3 years, Mr. Liu's taste hasn't changed at all." I smiled at Betsy, who was standing behind him. Catching her eye, I added, "She just keeps coming back to this type." Lucas's expression changed slightly, and Betsy sat up straight. Her dark eyes stared at me, and her voice was laced with sarcasm when she spoke. "Well, I'm not like some people who are fickle and heartless." The colleagues around us gradually realized that something was wrong and exchanged glances, their gossip senses tingling. "Just kidding," I said to Betsy. I really didn't want the conversation to continue. Lucas stepped between us, blocking Betsy's gaze. He forced a smile. "So it's settled then. Betsy, you'll design my anniversary gift, alright?" He emphasized the words anniversary gift as if to emphasize Betsy's love for him. Unfortunately for him, it didn't faze me in the slightest. "You're welcome," I replied matter-of-factly. "Remember to pay a 30% deposit up front." This was business. If they wanted me to work, they had to follow my rules. The boss's little boyfriend was no exception. As soon as I said this, the meeting room fell silent. The supervisor glared at me as if he wanted to bore a hole through me, and I could practically see the words, bold and reckless, and ungrateful, in his eyes. Betsy stood up and let out a cold laugh. "Don't worry, you'll get your money." After throwing those words at me, she left without a backward glance. The supervisor sighed. "Lee, did you see what I saw in Mr. Liu's eyes back there?" I was confused. Charm and grace. Wrong. It was fury. "She's angry. You had a bright future ahead of you, but you just had to throw it all away." The supervisor left, shaking his head. My colleagues all stared at me, some with pity, some with schadenfreude. Only Tony looked at me with concern. "Lee, being straightforward isn't a bad thing, but you have to be more tactful in the workplace." "Me?" I asked, pointing at myself. I didn't understand why Tony would say such a thing. I was plenty tactful. Tony opened his mouth to say something else, but just then, the phone on my desk vibrated a few times. An unfamiliar number popped up on the screen. "Excuse me." I smiled sheepishly, picked up my phone, and answered. "Hello, this is Lee speaking." It was a strange man's voice. "Mr. Lee, this is Mr. Liu's assistant, David. Mr. Liu wants to speak with you." "Okay," I replied. Bosses these days, were they all so arrogant that they couldn't even be bothered to speak to people directly? There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. Then, a familiar voice rang out, laced with barely suppressed anger. "Lee, if you want your deposit, take me off your blacklist." I slapped my forehead. I almost forgot about that. Betsy's phone number and WeChat had been on my blacklist for 3 years. It was time to let them out. That evening, when I was taking Lucky to the vet for his vaccinations, a WeChat message popped up on my phone. I opened the app, and there, at the top of my chat list, was a contact with no name, just the letter B. The blue profile picture seemed familiar, bringing back a distant and hazy memory. It was a very hot summer. I had become obsessed with the song Coral Sea, and listened to it on repeat all day. I was also obsessed with drawing seascapes on my tablet. Every time I buried my head in my drawing, Betsy would come over and bother me. I still had baby fat on my face back then, and she loved to poke my cheeks. "You like the ocean that much? I'll buy you an island someday so you can look at it every day," she would say. I glared at her. "How many times have I told you not to touch my face?" The childish girl grinned, looking like a fool. "Lee's face is so chubby and cute, like a little hamster." Her words annoyed me. In a fit of anger, I drew a picture of a girl sitting alone on an island. I pointed at the girl's back and threatened Betsy, "If you call me a hamster one more time, I'm going to leave you stranded on a deserted island." I snapped back to reality, staring at the familiar picture on my phone screen. Betsy had actually kept that drawing all these years and was even using it as her profile picture. But she was terrified of water. Suddenly, I felt a tug on my hand. Lucky meowed twice as he ran towards something, then turned around and looked at me expectantly. I looked up to see the pet store where I had bought Lucky's cat food and treats. "You little guy, you have a good memory." I stroked Lucky's head. Seeing him rub against me with a silly look on his face, I couldn't help but laugh. "Your dad just so happens to have money now. Let's go shopping." As Lucky continued to pull me towards the pet store, I used my free hand to accept the transfer notification on my phone. At the same time, I sent Betsy a meme. Generous boss. Because I was the one designing the gift for Betsy's little boyfriend, my supervisor gave me some time off to focus on the task. He told me I could work from home and communicate directly with Betsy if I had any questions. I slept until I woke up naturally, feeling very content. As I lay on the sofa, petting my cat, my phone buzzed with a text message notification. It was a bank notification informing me that 5 million had been transferred to my account. I stared at the string of zeros after the number, shocked and surprised. When did my sugar daddy get so generous? Maybe he was dissatisfied with the lack of progress on his mission and was giving me a little incentive. Financial motivation really got me going. I propped my chin in my hand and opened WeChat. Mr. Liu, are there any specific requirements for the anniversary gift? 5 minutes later, Betsy replied, I can't explain it clearly in a message. Come to the office to discuss it. Just what I wanted. When I walked into Betsy's office, she tried to appear indifferent, but I could see the flicker of excitement in her eyes. I got you now. The assistant who showed me in tactfully closed the door behind him, leaving Betsy and me alone in the large office. Today, she was wearing a dark green pantsuit. The buttons were fastened all the way to the top, giving her an aura of untouchable elegance. She looked so good. Sensing my gaze, Betsy raised an eyebrow. What are you looking at? Just admiring how breathtakingly beautiful and dignified you are, Mr. Liu, I replied smoothly. Betsy snorted. She pursed her lips, looking away. If you're not going to flirt back, can you at least try to hide your amusement? I muttered. I took out my tablet and showed her several templates. Mr. Liu, what kind of gift do you want to give your boyfriend? Bracelets and rings are relatively simple. We can incorporate some elements that are meaningful to the two of you. How about a whole set? Betsy asked casually. Of course, I replied with a professional smile. She glanced at me, her long fingers tapping on the desk. And we can't do something like moon and sixpence again. It's impossible. Looking at her nonchalant expression, I couldn't bring myself to smile. I felt a surge of anger. Moon and sixpence is a reminder of me and my ex-girlfriend. I'm sure your boyfriend wouldn't want his anniversary gift to be associated with someone else's memories. Is that so? Betsy's voice was low and dangerous. You seem to care a lot, Mr. Lee. You must have really loved your ex. I did, I said, nodding. After all, she's dead. This is all I have left of her. Betsy's smile vanished. She stood up and walked towards me, her whole body radiating an icy aura. What do you mean, dead? I didn't know I was gone. You're the one who pretended not to know me, I retorted. Maybe because I was so familiar with her, I wasn't afraid of Betsy even when she was angry. I pouted and asked bluntly, so, you want me to design something like moon and sixpence? Are you trying to punish me, or him? Moon and sixpence was my proudest work, and the inspiration behind it was standing right in front of me. Betsy seemed to be speechless. You'd even give up on me for this? She sounded hurt. I seized the opportunity. Is it too late to change my mind? I asked. Betsy looked up sharply, her eyes searching mine. For a moment, our eyes met, and I felt a strange sense of guilt. In the next second, Betsy's expression transformed. She sneered. Don't be ridiculous. Fine, be that way. I took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. So, what do you want for the anniversary gift? Betsy pursed her lips, trying to appear indifferent. Whatever, you decide. The boss had spoken, so I could only do as I pleased. But as a jewelry designer with high moral standards, I thought for a moment and asked, Mr. Liu, would it be convenient for you to tell me about your love story? Betsy raised an eyebrow. That's an odd request. It's not just about the design, it's also... She glanced at her phone and stood up. I need to go home for dinner. That's all right. I'm hungry too, I said, trying to sound nonchalant. I'm sure you won't mind an extra pair of chopsticks, right, Mr. Liu? We can talk more after dinner. With my shameless persistence, I successfully got into Betsy's car. The driver was surprised to see me, and his expression turned to shock when Betsy told him to go back to the Liu family mansion. I smiled to myself. You're probably thinking that I'm the first man she's ever brought home, right? I asked the driver. Not really, the driver replied honestly. Lucas has been here many times. The smile on my face slowly faded. Betsy, who had overheard our conversation, turned to look at me, her eyes twinkling with amusement. What, did you think you were special? I was just kidding, I grumbled. Why are you taking it so seriously? You're not very funny, Betsy said flatly. We rode in the back of the car like two sworn enemies, sitting as far away from each other as possible. We arrived at the Liu residence, and I was greeted by a middle-aged man who was just as imposing as ever. It was my sugar daddy. He was as charismatic as ever. The moment I saw him, it was like I was looking at my endless bank account. A sweet smile immediately spread across my face. Uncle, it's been a while. Mr. Liu was taken aback to see me.